Hello, welcome back to Fleet Signal. My name is Alex. Welcome to episode 6 of How to Play Firestorm Planetfall. In this episode, we're going to look at combat. So, let's begin. Okay, so in Planetfall, there are actually two types of combat. Close Quarters Battle, otherwise known as CQB, and main ordnance firing. Now, we're actually going to look at main ordnance firing first, even though CQB comes before it in the game turn. Because once you know how to do main ordnance firing, then CQB is pretty much the same thing, just with a few tweaks. So even the rulebook suggests that you should learn main ordnance firing before CQB. So let's have a look at main ordnance firing first. So here you can see we've got a pretty simple example of combat. We've got some Aquan Imzani light skimmers in combat with some Retaliator Directorate medium crawlers. And for this example, let's say that I'm playing the Aquans and I've just made a cruise move with my Aquans up to here, and now I'm going to fire on these Directorate medium crawlers. So the first thing to do is to declare my attack. So I say that I'm going to use these skimmers to attack these crawlers. Pretty simple. Next we have to determine whether or not these skimmers are actually in range to attack these medium crawlers. So the range of the weapons on these guys, the pulse cannons, is in effective range, it's 12 inches. So let's have a look and see. So let's just set 12 inches on here, and we can see that pretty much everyone in the squadron is in range. Okay, next we have to determine line of sight. Now in Planetfall, for line of sight purposes, there are 4 different classes of elements: light, armored, elevated and flying. So in this case we've got light elements fighting against armored elements. Now light elements cannot shoot through other light elements, and they can't shoot through armored elements either, but they can shoot up at an elevated element or a flying element. So in this case these 3 guys are going to be able to participate in this attack, but this guy at the back is blocked by his squad mates, so he can't actually participate in this attack. Okay, next we have to determine whether or not any models are not viable as targets. So if one of these tanks was behind a building and there was no line of sight to him because buildings are elevated and they block line of sight to light and armored elements, then if this guy was behind a building, then he wouldn't be a viable target. I wouldn't be able to see him, I wouldn't be able to shoot him. However, these 3 guys are out in the open, not a good idea, but in this case they are out in the open, so these 3 Imzani can fire upon these 3 crawlers. Okay, next we have to do the target priority chain, the TPC, which is basically just saying which models are going to take damage in which order. As you'll see later, damage carries over in Planetfall, so it's important to determine the TPC at this stage. So in this case we're going to say that this guy is number 1, this guy is number 2, and this guy is number 3 in the chain. Next we have to determine flank or aft bonuses. Getting into the flank or the aft of a model is really good in Planetfall, because you get bonuses on your attack and they get penalties. So if we were attacking these models from the flank, then they would get -1 to their DR, their damage rating. If we were attacking them in the aft and in the back, then they would get -2 to their damage rating. However, we're firing at them from the front, so they don't take any penalties to their DR. Okay, next we have to decide which weapons are going to be firing. And so each of these skimmers only has one type of weapon, the Maelstrom Pulse Cannon. So each of these skimmers is only going to use that one weapon, each per model, to fire. After that we would see if we could combine weapons. Now if a model has more than one weapon, then it can actually combine those weapons, providing that they either share a MAR, a model assigned rule, or that both weapons don't have a MAR. If a weapon has, for example, Pinpoint, and another weapon has Terror, you can't combine them. But if both weapons have Pinpoint, for example, or if both weapons don't have a MAR, then you could actually combine those weapons for even more attack dice. However, in this case we're not going to do any combining, because these Imzani only have one weapon each. Okay, finally for this step we have to determine whether or not we're firing in EF or LR range, the firing solution as it's called in the game. So some models can fire in both EF and LR ranges, and at this point you'd have to determine which range you're going to fire at. Are you going to fire at EF or are you going to fire at LR? In this case these Imzani can only fire in EF, So that's how we're going to fire. So now that we've determined how these guys are going to fire, we get the dice. So that's 5 dice per model for these Mzani, and we're going to roll them. So let's roll 15 dice and see what we get. So in total we've got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 hits. Now if any of these Mzani had damage markers on them, then we'd have to take away 1 success for each damage marker in the squadron. However, they don't have any damage markers, so we don't have to do that, and we can go straight on to allocating damage. So these Directorate crawlers each have a DR of 7 plus 6, which means that we need to do 7 points of damage, or I should say 7 successes, to get the first point of damage, and we need another 6 successes after that to do the second point of damage and destroy the model, although not literally, of course. So let's assign some damage. Remember, our TPC is 1, 2, 3. So this guy gets the first 4, 5, 7. Right. So we've got 7 successes on him so far. Now we have to continue allocating damage to this model until we've hit enough to destroy it, if there is enough. So we're going to allocate another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it looks like this guy's in trouble because all of the damage is going to go to him and he's going to get destroyed. So now these models all have shields. They each have a shield of 2. So now they can roll shields in order to try to save themselves. Now an important thing to remember about shield saves is that any successes that you roll when you roll shields come off floating dice first and then come off the successes that are allocated to each model. So for example, if the Aquans had managed to roll an extra 2 hits on that attack, and the Directorate Crawlers managed to roll successfully for shield saves, then any shield saves would come off the floating dice first, and then they'd come off the successes allocated to the model. And this is part of what makes Planetfall such a deadly game. Okay, so let's roll shields for the Directorate. So each of these models has a shield rating, an SH rating of 2. So that means that they each contribute 2 to their shield roll. So we're going to roll 6 dice. So 2, 4, 6. Here we go. Okay, so we've got a 6. Shield rolls do explode just like the attack dice do. So let's take these off, and that's nothing as well. So let's roll an extra dice. We've got another 6, and we've got a 2. So the Directorate have managed to defend themselves pretty well in this attack with 2, 4, 5, and 6. So there are no floating dice, so these shield saves are going to come off the dice that we have here. So let's remove the damage from these medium crawlers. So 2, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that leaves us with 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage on this crawler, which means that it is going to take a damage marker because it has sustained enough damage, well, to damage it. Okay, now as this squadron took damage in that attack, it now needs to make a disorder check. So to do a disorder check, the standard number of dice is 3d6, and then you need a success for each point of damage that the squadron took in the previous attack. If the squadron was within a command element, within range of a command element, then it will get 1 extra dice. If the squadron were elite, then it would also get 1 extra dice. If the squadron were militia type, then it would lose 1 dice. However, these guys are regular and they're not within a command element, so we're going to roll a standard 3d6 for these guys for their disorder check. And even though the Aquans seem to have helped a little with this, they've passed with flying colours. We've got 2 successes, only 1 point of damage was taken, so we've easily passed this disorder check, and these guys are not disordered. However, if they failed their disorder check, let's change these dice. So we need 4 pluses to hit on the disorder check. If these guys had failed the disorder check, they would then take a disorder marker, and that marker would change into a damage marker at the end of the in the end phase, at the end of the turn. So this would actually have been destroyed if these guys had managed to fail this disorder check. However, they passed, so they're fine. Okay, now let's have a look at CQB, Close Quarters Battle. CQB follows a lot of the rules that you'll find for main ordnance, but with a few key differences. And here we're going to see what those differences actually are. So in this quick example, I've lined up the Aquan skimmers again against the Directorate medium crawlers. So let's say that I'm playing the Directorate this time, and that I've just moved these guys using a cruise move into range of the Aquans, and I want to call a CQB engagement. Remember, CQB comes before main ordnance in the game turn. So I've decided to initiate a CQB attack here, but if I hadn't decided to initiate a CQB attack, then these Aquans could have initiated a counterattack of their own, provided they hadn't initiated a CQB engagement this turn. Any squadron that has already initiated CQB at any point during the game turn cannot initiate CQB again during that turn, although they may respond to CQB engagements whenever, they find themselves in one. Okay, another key difference with CQB is that the attacks are made simultaneously from both sides. So if I fire upon these Aquans with a Directorate, then the Aquan player would be able to fire against my Directorate at the same time, in the same engagement. Another key difference is that if I have a disorder marker on my Directorate, then I would not be able to engage in CQB. However, if the Aquans were firing upon me, in other words, if they initiated CQB, then I would be able to respond. Okay, another thing about CQB is that protective Mars, such as hard target, and shield saves don't apply. So for example, these Aquans actually have hard target, which gives them a -1 bonus on their to hit, or a +1 depending on how you look at it. Basically, you hit them on 5+, not 4+. However, in CQB that doesn't apply. So in this engagement, I would be hitting the Aquans on 4+, not 5+. Okay, and finally for CQB, flank and aft bonuses don't apply. You only get those in main ordnance. In CQB, it doesn't matter if you're attacking in the flank or the rear, you don't get those bonuses. Okay, so let's do a sped up example of CQB shooting. So CQB range is always 4 inches. So we can see that all of these guys are within CQB range. I think even these guys are in range of each other. These guys are in range of each other. So everyone's in range for CQB. And also CQB weapons have a 360-degree arc of fire, although that doesn't really matter in this example. Okay, so let's fast forward through the usual stuff like checking line of sight, because everyone's in line of sight, they're all viable targets. So let's get straight to the shooting. So each of these guys have a CQB of 4, whilst each of these Aquan skimmers have a CQB of 1. So these guys be rolling 4 dice, these guys be rolling 12 dice. So let's roll the Directorate first. Okay, so let's take away all the misses. There are a lot of misses here, but there is a 6. Okay, so the Directorate have only managed to score 2, 3, 4, 5. You do count exploding 6s in CQB. Now, as I said, the Aquans only have a CQB of 1 each. So 1, 2, 3, 4 dice. Let's see what the Aquans get. The Aquans have rolled significantly better, I think. Okay, maybe not that much better considering the amount of dice they had. Still, they've got 4. Now remember, each of these Directorate crawlers has a DR of 7 plus 6, whereas each of these Aquan skimmers has a DR of 4. So let's say that our TPC was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and assign some damage. So this Aquan is going to get 4 damage, and 1 damage will carry over, which effectively becomes floating, or that doesn't actually matter in this scenario. And this Directorate crawler is going to get 5 damage. So in this instance, there are no shield saves, no protective Mars, nothing like that. So this Aquan skimmer has taken 4 damage, and so it's destroyed. And then the 1 damage carrying over to the next guy doesn't matter. Whereas on the Directorate side, we only managed to do 2, 3, 4 damage. He's got a DR of 7 for his first damage point, so that just bounces off. Ping! So now, just like main ordnance, one of these guys took damage. In fact, he was destroyed. So the squadron has to take a disorder check. So we roll 3d6 normally. However, these guys are actually elite quality. So they get +1 to their disorder roll. And as we can see, that kind of went inside the building, but there's a 5 in there. They have passed. So they're not going to become disordered. So that was just a quick example of CQB and the differences between CQB and main ordnance firing. It's not that different to main ordnance, but it does have significant differences that you should be aware of all the same. Okay, so that was a look at combat in Firestorm Planetfall. In this episode we covered both close quarters battle, CQB, and main ordnance attacks. In the next episode we're going to take a look at sky drops. As always, leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down on this video depending on how you felt about it, and also be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with videos that appear on this channel. Also, don't forget to check out Fleet Signal on social media and check out fleetsignal.com as well. Okay, that's all for now. Until next time, see ya!